You are listening to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast, your one-stop shop for the outstanding, the unconventional, and the downright strange. Strap in because the boys are about to take a wild ride. I'm Funk Master B, setting up that tea for the duo of dumb foolery. Your hosts, Dan and Lee.
Of course I believe in aliens. I mean, in an infinitely growing universe, why would we be the only living species? Bigfoot, Nessie, all that stuff, it's gotta be real. How are we to say that we're the only ones? It's just ignorant. I think aliens are not only from other planets, but they're time travelers.
Welcome back to Beyond Terrestrial. Thank you for joining us again on this special episode of Beyond Terrestrial. Dan, we're talking again and finishing the story of Mr. I don't know if I want to call him Mr.
Right.
Paul Reed Jr., the motherfucker that he is.
Yeah, 100%. He's also known as the fast food killer, terrorized Nashville and Middle Tennessee in 1997. Lee, what do you remember from the last show? Tell us what you remember about that. Recap it for the listeners.
All right, quick 30-second recap. Paul Reed Jr. kind of messed up in the head, got an effed up ear as well. He did some things that were called naughty, but it was really mostly attempted murder. In one case, he tries to light his grandmother's bed on fire while grandma is in the bed and kills her dog. Then, moving forward, he beats his wife. He ends up going to jail for theft. In jail, tells other inmates that he is going to kill the next people he steals from because the key is to leave no witnesses. Flash forward to his first official murder, and he kills 2 people. A man of only 25 years old with 3 kids and a beautiful wife at home, and a young lady just trying to get enough money to buy herself a new car at the tender age of 16. And now we come to the next chapter in Paul Reed, or as I like to say it, this motherfucker's life.
Right. So Paul Reed Jr. Was trying to be a country singer. He called himself Justin Parks when he was country singing in his white hat and mustache, trying to look like Garth Brooks and shit. But he wasn't good.
I apologize. I did miss a step. He is tone deaf.
Right. I mean, he's got a messed up ear. So he was working at a Nashville Shoney's to make money because he wasn't a very good singer. And on February 27th, 1997, Paul Reed Jr., who had been a problem child, who had gone to prison for multiple strong-arm robberies, who was a liar, who was a great big asshole, got fired from his job at that Shoney's.
Yes.
So...
well-deserved firing.
Yes, he lost his temper and threw a plate like a frisbee at a female coworker and pegged her square in the chest.
I'm sorry, Dan.
That is something people get fired for.
For as fucked up as that is, that scene would be hilarious to watch.
Yeah, evidently this lady was I mean, Paul Reed Jr. was over 6 feet tall.
Oh, yeah.
He had prison muscles. And this poor little waitress just got taken out by a Shoney's plate.
So just to establish, if you didn't hear the first episode, please go back and listen to the first episode. You get a lot more information. However, this young man, I mentioned, kind of messed up in the head, but he was most likely developmentally disabled. So not only did he have prison muscles, it's possible he may have had other things going on as well.
Right. Oh, yeah. I get where you're going with that, and I'm not going to say it.
I'm not saying it either, but I just wanted to...
So this is like 11 days after he commits these murders at Captain D's with Steve Hampton and Sarah Jackson. So, and these are, like you said, the first official murders on his record.
Yes.
There may be more. He went on a crime spree in Houston, Texas as a youth, and they think maybe he did some other things, but we'll talk about that later. So during that Captain D's robbery, a person driving by thought they saw someone in a Shoney's apron at the Captain D's exiting the store at the time of the murders. So naturally, the police followed up this lead. They went and looked at Shoney's employees, ran their names through FBI databases to see if they were possible suspects. And Paul Reed Jr. was included in this search, and they didn't hit on his name. This guy who had been a felon in Texas committed multiple strong-arm robberies.
And this is... So I'm sorry. This is a classic example, and we've talked about similar situations of the system just failing to, I guess, communicate with one another.
Right. Well, here's part of what happened, Lee. Paul Reed Jr. was not very smart, but he did some things in a very cagey and shady way that helped keep his identity undercover. Unbeknownst to investigators following up this Shoney's lead, Paul Reed Jr. had falsified his birth certificate and his Tennessee driver's license. Because his birthday did not match on his Tennessee license, he did not come up in the database search. He was still on parole. He was on parole in Texas. Mm-hmm. But he only had to check in once a year, and he could live anywhere he wanted. So he should have come up, but...
I feel like regardless, like I feel like there should be like at least like a human double check, right? Well, I mean, I guess this was the 90s, so it probably was all done by humans to a large extent. But like,
no, they would have had computers for all this. Yeah,
I guess you're right. Yeah,
but they wouldn't have like the AI algorithms that we would have now. Like right now, you could run it through, and it'd be like,
hey, there's something funky here. Like somebody needs to come back and look at this.
70% of this information matches.
Yeah.
You could get a probability. And you could be like, okay, well, let's just look at these top choices. Mm-hmm. Back then, it'd be like, oh, the search results didn't match. So, you're SOL.
Okay. Where was Google when you need it?
I know. It sucks, man. And they released composite sketches. Who they thought it might be, suspect of interest. The people who had worked there the night before had someone come in late, well, we'll get to those in a second. Let's talk about his next grisly crime. March 23rd, 1997. Paul Reed Jr.'s lost his job. He needs money. He was in financial straits before when he knocked over the Captain D's. Now he doesn't have a job.
You know what? I think the best idea is to, make money the easy way, like quick and easy.
Quick and easy.
Yeah.
That's what he told everyone. It's so easy. Just knock over a restaurant. His next target was a McDonald's in Hermitage. Hermitage is just a little ways down the road from Donaldson. The McDonald's on Lebanon Road. That's the way Tennesseans would pronounce that, Lebanon.
Lebanon. Yeah.
It looks like Lebanon, but
Yeah.
that's not how Tennesseans say it. You know, I did,
Lebanon.
I did a job in Lafayette, Tennessee. It's up here in northern Tennessee, but the Tennesseans, they call it Lafayette.
Oh, you know what? You want to discuss New Orleans or
Oh, dude, yeah, don't get started on Mississippi.
or even Louisville.
You know how many times I'll be like at a fast food restaurant in Mississippi and I'm just sitting there like, fries? Like, what did you just say? I think I'll take a Coke. And they're like, no.
Y'all want sweet tea with that? We got sweet tea. We got Pepsi. We got.
No, you're going way too fast for Mississippi, son. Way too fast.
Oh, sorry. My bad. My bad.
This is the South, not an auction.
I apologize.
So yeah, this place was only a couple miles from the Captain D's that he knocked over.
Well, it sounds like he's following. There's a main stretch basically, which is Lebanon Pike, or Lebanon Road, and it just kind of runs quite a ways. So
yeah. So, and it's it's a nicer part of town. So there you go. Just after 11 p.m. on March the 23rd, 4 employees were closing the restaurant. Ronald Santiago was a Puerto Rican gentleman. He was the manager on duty. He came to the mainland to earn a better living. He was 27 years old. He also was not scheduled to work that night. He took a shift for another manager who went home sick. So, yeah.
No good deed. I'm sorry. But
Yeah, right. And, this poor lady dealt with a lot of survivor's guilt after
I'm sure.
this sort of thing.
I'm sure.
But again, it's not her fault,
None of it is. It's all Paul's.
Yeah. This asshole turned a normal day into the worst day of dozens and dozens of people's lives. And
You're talking 30 employees.
Right, and he did it multiple times.
Yeah.
And he's a big giant piece of shit. So continuing on. He like I said, he wasn't scheduled to work that night. He was joined by Robert Sewell, 23, who was working on training a new employee, one Jose Gonzalez, an undocumented Mexican who did not speak hardly any English. But Ronald Santiago, being Puerto Rican descent, would translate for him, and he was a hard worker and seemed to be an okay guy. And
it's one of those things where ultimately they're coming to try to have a better life.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame someone for that.
You can't blame them for that. Maybe the way they went about it might not be legal, but you can't blame them for
right.
wanting.
There were some rumors that after this, McDonald's had to do some damage control concerning his legal working status. So, but that's probably corporate classified stuff they don't go into. Which was odd. I couldn't find out. I don't think it was in the book how much Paul Reed got away with in this McDonald's robbery. It would say about the other robberies. How much do you think he got in that first Captain D's robbery where he murdered 2 people?
So what, 1997?
1997.
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
Sunday morning.
Before the store opened.
8 to 10 grand. Maybe.
Yeah, you are pretty close, except it's less. It's like 7,400. So, not a lot of money to kill 2 people for.
No. I mean, in 1997, it's a little more money than it is today, but it's still not a lot of money.
No. So, yeah, I think McDonald's, just because of a lot of things that surrounded this case kept theirs a little closer to the vest. And it's a bigger company, too, so they are better at that sort of thing. And the last employee, the fourth employee, was a young girl named Andrea Brown, 17 years old. She was attending a magnet school in Nashville for advanced high schoolers. So she was part of the gifted and talented sort of set of Nashville students. As the employees left, a man approached Ronald and forced him to call the employees together. At gunpoint, he forced the employees back inside. The man, later identified as Paul Reed Jr., made Ronald Santiago open the safe. Ronald told Jose in Spanish that everything would be okay. They were just going to give him the money and the man would leave. Reed collected his haul, including the security tapes, and forced the employees to lie down in a dry storage area in the back of the restaurant. And I think you can see where this is going, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
He shot Ronald, Robert, and Andrea in the back of the head. And then he turned the gun to Jose, and it didn't work. Click, click, click.
He was out?
Not sure. Not sure what happened. Jose didn't know what happened. So he was like, he just watched 3 people executed in front of him. When he heard the gun click, there was a pause. Paul seemed to be backing away. So he stood up. He got up to run, and he ran into Paul Reed Jr., and he was trying to push the man back. He was hoping he was going to escape. He's like, I'm going to push past him. I'm going to run out. His hopes were dashed by 17 stab wounds to the head, shoulders, back, arms. Jose went limp. He was still alive, and he stopped struggling in hopes that Paul would stop stabbing him if he thought he was dead. And it worked. Paul Reed Jr. did stop, and he left with the cash and the security tapes and the hopes and dreams of a number of families. So, big asshole. But he made a mistake. He didn't check on Jose. He left Jose alive. Jose had been instructed by Ronald Santiago on the use of 911. He was new to the country. He didn't know a lot. Santiago spoke Spanish. He said if there's any problems, you dial 911. Jose was able to crawl to the phone, pick it up, covered in blood, and dial a 911 operator. But here's the rub, Lee. He didn't speak any English. And at the time, this is 1997.
They couldn't trace the call.
No, they could trace the call, luckily.
Okay.
Luckily, it was a landline phone.
But they didn't have built-in translators.
They didn't have a translator. So he's asking for help. And they don't know what to do. Also, this is another little detail in the book. He's trying to talk to this 911 operator for I don't know how long. I'm sure the call is part of the public record, so you could look that up. But he hung up the phone and actually tried to call his family in Mexico.
Oh.
Yeah. So
he thought he was going to die.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh.
So luckily, like we said, the police, the 911 dispatchers were able to trace that call. Yes. And they sent some cops out, and they arrived on the scene, which was, a bloody mess. Mm-hmm. Here's this kid stabbed multiple times. One of his defensive wounds, being stabbed in the head and neck and torso. Some of these stab wounds to the torso were so deep the knife came out the front.
From the back?
From the back, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Jose was a smaller guy. He was like, less than 150 pounds. Paul Reed Jr. is over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, very muscular. So, I mean, he drove that knife right through this poor kid. But he survived. One of his defensive wounds almost lost him a finger. It was just hanging by the skin. They were able to reattach it, and they were able to sew him back up. And the EMTs were able to save, and the doctors at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center were able to save his life. So, sadly, Robert Sewell and Ronald Santiago were beyond medical attention. They were already passed away. Andrea Brown was still breathing when medical personnel arrived, despite getting a double tap to the head. So she was taken to the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, but being shot in the head didn't work out. She she was a gifted, hardworking girl. She had the world ahead of her. But before she left this world, she saved other people's lives by becoming an organ donor. So props to her and her family. That's something, guys, if you guys haven't done that, it's so easy. You go into the DMV, you tell them you want to be an organ donor. Right?
Absolutely.
Do it.
And
not worth it.
You don't have to give up your personality or your... I've had people say, oh, well, they just take parts of you and... Yeah, they take parts of you and save people's lives.
Yeah, totally.
You don't have to give skin or eyes or anything like that. The vital organs that keep people alive is what's important.
Yeah. So it's definitely something, and I know some people have like religious, opposition to it. So whatever, if that's your belief, that's your belief. But for anyone else, go do it. Just sign the paperwork. So. If you're dead, you don't really need your heart or your lungs or your kidneys or your liver. Like, just give them up. Someone else can use them. So, like we said, Robert Sewell and Ronald Santiago, there was no help for them. Robert's little sister later on would continue to drive his pickup truck. Try and remember him. And Ronald Santiago had asked his brother to bring a blue suit that he liked to Nashville on his next visit so that they could wear it when they went out. He was buried in Puerto Rico in his brother's blue suit. So this is the kind of shit that a lot of folks don't talk about, right? Because it sucks. It really fucking sucks. And in this book, When Nashville Bled by Judith Yates, that we're using for our research, she goes into it all, man. She talks about their funerals. Like, fucking, I was crying reading this shit because it's terrible. It's terrible, and it really drives home what a giant asshole Paul Reed Jr. was.
Yeah, and anybody, like, it's not just Paul Reed Jr. Pretty much anybody that would take the life of another person without just cause,
right,
is a giant asshole.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Paul Reed Jr., so he's a motherfucker.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, for the money at a fast food restaurant, like, money.
Did you know that you can buy a ski mask for like $4?
What?
Yeah. Like $4.
Hide your identity? Yeah. Or a Halloween mask?
Yeah. You might spend $19.97, $10 on a Halloween mask.
Yeah. You could go down to the store, get you a William Shatner mask, paint it white.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's already tall. He could have pulled off the shape if he wanted to. You get some coveralls.
Do you know if that showed up? Dan, if Mike Myers showed up at like a restaurant or something that I was working at and was robbing me, I would literally shit my pants. Like I would
dude.
literally shit my pants. Like,
But see, here's the thing. Paul Reed Jr. is cagey. He's been to prison. He knows a little bit about criminality, but he's also stupid.
yeah.
He's the worst combination of a lying criminal asshole and stupid that just somehow works out.
It's like what I like to call myself about like my computers, right? I am just knowledgeable enough in computers to be dangerous, right? And what I mean by that is I know how to get into like the little systems on my computer and just fuck the shit up, so I have to have a professional help me fix it.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah.
he is just good enough at being a criminal and just smart enough to be extra dangerous as a criminal.
Right.
Like,
Well, and here's another example of this. The fast food killer used a different gun in this McDonald's robbery. He used a 25 caliber weapon instead of the 32. So that makes it a little bit different. That might throw someone off, but not the Nashville detectives who were working on this case.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hey, y'all.
What can I do you for?
Can I have a glass of Chardonnay?
I'm sorry, darling. We don't serve that here.
Any Merlot?
I'm pretty sure you don't want these feet going nowhere near them grapes.
Alrighty, how about a craft beer?
Oh, yeah. We got plenty of crap beer. Which one you want?
No, not crap beer. Craft beer.
Oh, no, hell no. I'm pretty sure the bar down the street serves that.
Okay, well, what do you serve?
I'm glad you asked. Welcome to the Backwoods Barcast. We serve up moonshine, cheap beer, bottom shelf liquor, and stories even harder to swallow. Join Nick
And Brittany.
and the janitor Steven as we discuss southeastern mysteries and mayhem, including but not limited to UFOs, true crime, the paranormal, and much more. So knock 4 times, grab a stool, let the bar talk commence, and as always, drink more beer.
So now you've had 2 terrible murders that are in the news that happen just miles apart from each other in a nicer part of town. These robberies, these execution style murders, they had Nashville fast food workers on edge. Many of them like walked off the job. Restaurant employees put special stickers in the back of their windows, like in the back window of their car, so that when they were parked at the restaurant at night, any cars that were like for customers or might be suspicious would be easily identified by cops. Patrols around the restaurants were increased. They had cops putting in all kinds of overtime trying to find this dude. And people were scared. People in the city were scared. You can imagine, Lee, if a couple restaurants, or imagine if it was like a couple retail stores, like the Walmart in this town gets knocked over, and a couple days later it's another store. Mm-hmm. How crazy would your bosses be about making sure you guys didn't get robbed?
I would love to say that I would have faith that something good would be done. Like, I don't know, like we're going to close until this is figured out or something like that. But no.
Right. Well, I mean, and what are they going to do? Like, the best they could probably do is hire private security.
Yeah, that would probably be the best that they could do. And hiring private security on less than $30,000 a day in sales, it's hard to maintain. Yeah. Might get one security guard.
Right. Like who's just there like at night,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Yeah, it's tough, man. But the detectives working on Paul Reed Jr.'s case, you know, despite using different weapons, despite slight differences, you know, one was in the morning, one was at night, it was pretty obvious that these crimes were committed by the same person. So a lot of these detectives, they would take holidays off. They would work weekends. They were grinding on this case. But Paul Reed Jr. just kept eluding them. Jose Gonzalez saw Paul Reed Jr. He got very up close with him. Composite sketches came out. People said, hey, that kind of looks like Paul. But, oh, he's such a nice guy. He'd never do that.
I'm actually mad at the inmates, too. Like, I feel like even inmates at, like, a prison would be like, yo, that kind of looks like Paul. Like,
right. I mean, they were in Texas, though, so.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, Paul Reed Jr., he had a few girlfriends. He had some lady friends somewhere down in Texas. He used some of the proceeds from these robberies to fly up a girlfriend. Yeah, so he could hang out with her in Nashville and take her around and see the sights. He also had a girlfriend just north of Nashville, here in Clarksville, Tennessee, Lee.
Good old Clarksville.
Yes, Clarksville is a military town. It is home to Austin P University, and it is the birthplace of the Beyond Terrestrial podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. And in the late 90s, it was home to two young women, Angie Holmes and Michelle Mace. The two worked at Baskin-Robbins on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, which still stands.
Yeah.
So it's still there. I believe, Lee, you said it had been remodeled recently.
Yeah. Looks like Dunkin' Donuts bought them out, and then they are still Baskin Robbins, but they also have Dunkin' attached.
Dude,
so,
I love Dunkin' coffee, man.
Yeah.
See, this is when you talk about this is why we got into the subject of fast food killer, is because we are such fat asses and we thought it would be great. We're like, oh yes, McDonald's, Baskin Robbins, we love it.
And then we realized the teenagers that this motherfucker's killing.
Right.
And I don't even care. This is an extra episode. I'm gonna curse as much as I want.
Yeah, there you go.
At this guy.
Right. And the thing is, Lee, like, we've both worked a cash register.
Uh-huh.
Right? And you've had people come through your line who you're like, oh, shit, I don't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't know about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I got trained for a little bit in, like, loss prevention. Mm-hmm. Never again. I don't want to do that ever.
Yeah.
Because, like, you never know when someone who's trying to shoplift and run out the doors could, you know, pull a knife and try and stab you for a handful of DVDs or some dumb shit.
It's crazy what people are willing to do for so little. It's one thing, in my opinion, if you see somebody trying to steal a loaf of bread, right? Or steal food for their family, right? Okay, I get it. I absolutely get it. And in fact, I'm not going to I'm going to do my best to help that person out. And I'm even going to be much more understanding if I see them if they pull a knife in an attempt to escape over a loaf of bread than a pile of DVDs, right?
You'd be surprised. Like, when it comes to groceries, people don't if they're going to do like a grocery theft, it's usually going to be like a walkout with the cart.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be stuff the meat in the pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I got a pack of steaks and I'm putting them in my waistband.
Yeah. No, that's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember I worked at Walmart for a while as well, for quite a while. I know it. I know it. And you hear some crazy stories. I got in good with some of the loss prevention people, and in fact, I got in good with a loss prevention person.
Yeah, there you go.
Some of the stories are crazy.
Yeah, dude, watch out. They don't sell that meat after it's been put in somebody's pants, though. Luckily, that goes straight to the Tiger King Zoo.
Yeah.
So
I saw tiger.
Yeah, tiger saw a man. So back in 1997, Lee, this is a few years back, Wilma Rudolph Boulevard was not as populated as it is today with businesses. In fact, it was pretty wide open. There were lots of empty lots out there still. There was open space surrounding that Baskin-Robbins. And Paul Reed Jr. pulled up to the ice cream shop on April 23rd, 1997, in a brand new car he had just leased with blood money.
Awesome. Now,
it was red. It was also red.
I do want to point out that hearing that there was space around that Baskin-Robbins is almost hard to comprehend looking at where it is now. And Dan, you've seen it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely, it has the smallest parking lot I've ever seen. And
dude, I went there for coffee. The line was all the way out to the road, man.
Yeah. No, it's a busy business. It's not like, it's not unsuccessful, but it has like the smallest parking lot I've ever seen. It has like 7 or 8 parking spots and then the drive-through line, and that's it.
Yeah, and there's lots of restaurants and gas stations, strip malls out there now. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff now.
Lawyers' offices are right next to it and all sorts of stuff.
A lawyer. Oh,
yeah.
So the evening of April 23rd, 1997, we're around closing time at this Clarksville Baskin-Robbins. Michelle was putting away the tubs of ice cream in the freezer for the night. They had the door propped open. They would use like a dolly or some of the tubs to prop the door open so they could go in and out. And Angie, who was the manager that evening, was out mopping the floor when a tall, muscular, dark-haired man with a goofy mustache knocked on the door.
Hey, I just want to... Good on Angie. Angie's doing the job that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. She's the manager. She could have asked the other girl to do the tubs, but she's doing it. She's mopping.
Yeah, well, and by all accounts, Angie was very good at her job. She's actually real smart girl. She was going to Austin P for nursing. She was on her game and kept the store clean. So it was all wiped down. They were wrapping up for the evening. They were getting ready to go home. Michelle's brother was on his way. Well, he was waiting. He was going to come pick her up. So there you go. We don't know how Paul Reed Jr. got into the store. I mean, you would assume Angie would come up and say, "Hey, we're closed." Somehow he got her to open the door. Maybe, like, "Hey, I can't hear you. I got a messed up ear." Right? Who knows, man? Who knows? But he got her to open the door. And that's when he pulled a knife on Angie Holmes. He forced them to give up all the money, go to the safe, open it up, all the money out of the tills. All he left in the tills were the coins. There you go. If I went over to knock over a Baskin-Robbins, I would, put my finger in the ice cream or something just to be an asshole, but that's me.
I feel like if I knocked over a Baskin-Robbins, I'd leave with more ice cream than I did money.
Yeah.
By far.
Well, this is where Paul Reed's MO takes a bit of a turn. This is where he escalates. This is where it advances again. Because we've seen throughout his criminal career his escalations.
Yes.
He escalated his pranks as a kid from stealing little toys and things like that to putting tacks in his grandma's food. He escalated as a teen from being mean to his friends and to his family to sexually molesting, sexually abusing his own family members. Allegedly. They don't talk about it, but that's what they say happened. He escalated as an adult, and he lies at every corner to make himself seem more grandiose. So, yeah, there we go. So in this escalation, in this new level, he decided to kidnap these two young girls. I think Angie was in her 20s. Michelle was like 16.
This is like a shitty role-playing game, and he's leveling up.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, God.
He bound their hands with the apron strings from their Baskin-Robbins uniforms. He forced them into his car. They were driven to Dunbar Cave State Park, an area that Paul was familiar with from his trips to Clarksville to see his girlfriend. This is like after 10 o'clock at night. It's dark. The park's supposed to be closed, but it sounds like that night a ranger left the gate open. So maybe this was something Paul knew happened from time to time. Again, maybe he'd been casing this joint. Maybe it was just dumb luck.
So unfortunately, I've been to Dunbar Cave, and other than the parking lot, when the gates are closed, there is no, there's no blockage of a person just going out onto the trails.
Right.
So other than the gates being closed and maybe a suspicious vehicle parked in just the entrance right there, he could have just gone, taken the girls in.
Right.
And I'm assuming it was probably less so then than it is now.
Yeah. And I've been by the parking lot. It seems like a pretty opened up area, but this is over 20 years ago, so who knows? Probably a little bit different, the trees and landscaping down there at the park, than what it is today. So yeah, he was able to pull right up into the parking lot there at Dunbar Cave. And this one's rough. The Dunbar Cave State Park was actually the venue for Angie Holmes's wedding.
Wow.
And he's just driven her there, bound in the back seat of his car, with the child safety locks on so they can't get out. And yeah, she's gonna have to fight for her life. He forced the girls down the path near a small lake. Michelle was walking in front of Angie, it seems like. And it appears from the evidence that was left that at some point Michelle tried to run. There are houses that are not that far away.
No, if she could have gotten a good enough distance and he didn't have a gun, she could have gotten to a house.
But her hands are tied behind her back. So Angie was found with her throat slit all the way to her spine. Her body was floating in the lake. Michelle was found a few hundred feet off the path in some woods. She had been killed the same way, her neck cut all the way to the bone. She also had multiple additional stab wounds to her head and shoulders. Angie Holmes left behind a loving husband and a 3-month-old baby girl. Michelle was 16. She was fun-loving, liked to party. By all accounts, was an attractive young lady who had dreams of taking care of her mother and becoming like a famous model. So, again, this asshole just snuffing out people. Why? Because he can.
Yeah, because it's not for the $1,500 he got out of the till at Baskin-Robbins.
Yeah, that was it. That was all the money that he got.
You don't just kill somebody for $1,500.
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Unless you like to kill.
And here's the thing, like, why would you target an ice cream shop? Like, why would you think there's money in there?
Well, you said it. He's not awful at being a criminal. He is stupid, though.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see later on in his court case. There was some questions about his ability to stand trial, about his competency. So,
well, Dan, that's a very sad note, but I do think we need to take a quick break to hear a little bit more from our friends at Fourth Hand.
All right.
Believe in UFOs? Felt that chill up your spine that you just can't explain? Contemplate the other side of reality? Do you shake your head at the world that seems to have lost its common sense? Well, look no further than Strange Uncles. Find them on all podcast platforms and call their hotline to tell your side of reality at 801-252-6945. Open the gates.
And we're back, Lee. Now, Lee, we have just detailed, in grisly, sad details, the crimes of Paul Reed Jr., a.k.a. the fast food killer. So now, the question is, how did he get caught? Well, we've already kind of mentioned it. He was dumb. Paul Reed Jr. was caught because he tried to get his old job back. Weird. Paul went to the home of a one Mitch Roberts, who had been his manager at Shoney's, to ask for his job back June 25th, 1997. So this is just a few months after Baskin-Robbins. Mitch couldn't rehire Paul. He'd been fired for throwing a plate at a woman.
No, but see, Mr. Roberts, like it was just a misunderstanding. I thought we were playing catch.
Oh, we were playing Frisbee in the back with the plates, which is also something you should be fired for. So yeah, it wasn't going to work. Plus, it was a Sunday, and he was at his house. Like, Paul just came up to his house and knocked on the door, asked for his job back.
I know you're trying to spend time with your family on the day of our Lord, but hey, I was hoping that the good grace of God and Jesus and or Allah or whoever your deity of choice is, I was just hoping that those good graces would inspire you to pass some good graces on to me. And can I please have my job back?
No. So the answer was no. Mitch tried to tell Paul to come into the restaurant the next day. He tried to get him out of the house. He was like, no, whatever. We talk about it later. But Paul was insistent. He told Mitch he had evidence of theft at Shoney's. Bum, bum, bum.
Evidence?
Evidence. He told Mitch he should come out to his car. He took Mitch out to the car, popped the trunk. I guess he had some boxes of, like, Shoney's meat or something in there. I don't know. I think Paul had been stealing from the Shoney's.
The evidence of the theft at Shoney's is my theft of Shoney's.
Right. And he was going to try and pin it on other people or something. I don't know. But yeah, whatever. So Mitch was still not having it. So Paul thought the best way to convince him might be to pull a gun on his old boss.
You know, that always gets me a job.
Right. That's the best way.
Yeah.
If any of you guys are looking for work, just take a gun to the next interview and
set it on the table.
Right. Just say, hey, I'm the shit and you should hire me.
I don't think there are any other questions. Next question.
Yes, right. That is 100% what gets people jobs. So luckily, Mitch played it cool. He kept Paul talking. He moved away from Paul. He started walking back towards his house. Paul was still arguing with Mitch. He was trying to fight for his job. He's very passionate about Shoney's. He just loved that Shoney's. So he was still arguing when Mitch turned his back and ran into the house. So Paul freaks out. He starts slamming into the door. He's trying to break in. He's yelling. And Mitch has this great idea. He yells for his wife to get a gun. It was a clever ruse. There was no gun. It scared Paul Reed Jr. off. And Paul drove home. And Mitch called the cops. After seeing this violent side of Paul, things started to fall into place in Mitch's head. The police sketches, the Shoney's apron, the deranged ruthlessness.
Oh, so all it took was a Shoney's manager to break this case.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. He called the cops and said, I think Paul Reed Jr. is the fast food killer.
I say that like sarcasm. I believe that the police were doing everything they could in this case.
Oh, yeah, they 100% were. Yeah.
And I'm not blaming them for that failure. Maybe a couple breakdowns of the system when it comes to connecting dots of criminal records, but it is kind of funny that a Shoney's manager was the one that was like, aha!
Aha! Yeah, so he was busted. But Paul was at home. He had left. So get this, Lee. You know how we said he's not smart?
Yeah.
Right? The police were at Mitch's house when Paul Reed Jr. called on the phone. He wanted to smooth things over with Mitch. He said, Mitch, I know things got out of hand. I got a little crazy. But I really need my job back. The cops told Mitch to get Paul back to the house. So Mitch invited Paul back.
The cojones on this manager, by the way, even with the cops there.
Yeah, I know. This guy tried to pull a gun on me. I was convinced he would kill my family if he got into the house. And then he would force me to go to Shoney's, give him all the money, and murder me too. But let's get him back.
Yeah, why not?
So the cops are there.
Well, in his defense, I'm proud of him. I'm so happy for this guy. This guy saved a lot of people. He really did save the lives of hundreds of people, maybe more. Because Paul was not going to stop. Yeah,
props to him. Props to these guys in the Clarksville PD who are like, bring him back here and we're going to bust his ass. So Mitch said, yeah, Paul, come on back. We'll talk about your job. Shit, we'll sit down and crack a beer. We can work this out. Yeah, I know you got a little out of hand. I know you pulled a gun on me. It's okay, buddy. Paul had a friend drive him back to Mitch's house, where he was swiftly apprehended.
Thank God.
Yes. So the Clarksville cops talked to the Nashville cops. They said, hey, we think this guy's the fast food killer. And he was fingerprinted when he was booked. And Paul Reed Jr. had left a trail of evidence that tied him to all of these crimes. He left footprints. He left a partial thumbprint on Steve Hampton's movie rental card from his stolen wallet. Check this out, Lee. He stole the wallet, took the money out, went through the cards, just tossed them out on the road as he was driving. The first cards were found by like a like some random ass dude walking down the road who's probably like, like a can man sort of guy. And then more cards were found later by like a, one of those chain gang cleanup crews.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a partial thumbprint for Paul Reed Jr. And ta-da! After he was booked, it matched up. They had this thumbprint early, but because it was only a partial, they couldn't get any search results, any solid search results.
And also, like, you look at it, they hadn't made the connection yet to look any farther, because of the birth date mix-up.
Right. If they had
an idea to look at him.
Yeah, like
they would have made that connection so
like
much sooner.
If they had known that 90% of Paul Reed's information matched up with his Texas records, like they would have been able to pull that, look at the prints, say that's our guy, boom, done. But nope, sadly that was not how these systems worked in 1997. Luckily, I think we're a lot better off than we were then.
Yes.
Jose Gonzalez was a star witness in this case. He had survived Paul Reed Jr.'s attacks, and on a brave move, he stood in court and said, "That's the guy." So, pinned it right on him. Fibers from Paul's car mats, which were store bought, they were aftermarket, and the upholstery from his car were found on Angie Holmes and Michelle Mace's bodies.
Vanity and stupidity. Oh, God, yes. This guy's loaded with it. So I got to get these new fancy car mats for my brand new car.
Right. And because the car mats were bought from the store and, you had the car to match it up with, it
minimizes the amount of options. It's very unlikely that two people are going to buy the same aftermarket floor mats.
Right. So, and put them in the same car.
Yeah. Yes,
right.
That's the point.
Yeah. He could be placed at or near the crime scenes by passers-by and receipts. He went to buy gas before he knocked over the Baskin-Robbins at a gas station right next to the store. Had the receipt.
There's literally 2 gas stations I can think of.
I can't remember. She says in the book, but I didn't write it down in my notes.
There's a Shell less than a block away, and then there's literally, I believe it's a Mapco, like the next parking lot over.
I want to say maybe it was Mapco, maybe it was Raceway or something like that. I don't know. It might have been different in 1997.
Yeah, and gas stations change names all the time, so that would be.
Yeah.
But the building is probably still there.
Oh, I'm sure. A lot of people in Clarksville, when they saw all the police lights out at the Baskin-Robbins, they thought someone had knocked over the gas station. Because who suspects someone of robbing an ice cream shop?
That's how he got in. Like, the girl was like, nobody's going to rob an ice cream shop.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, and this was part of Paul Reed's advice to other criminals. Clean cut look. Mm-hmm. People don't suspect you if you look like a normal Joe. Yes. So there you go. Paul, and the thing was, after this kidnapping at that Baskin-Robbins, Michelle's brother went over to pick her up. There's nobody there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the door's open, the mop bucket's sitting out on the floor, the freezer's propped open, gone.
You don't even lock up and make it look like. Well, let's be real. Like, any intelligent criminal would have just burnt the wallets or something of that nature, right?
Right, gotten rid of the evidence, yeah.
Gotten rid of the evidence in those cases.
Shit, just put it in the trash can and somewhere and have it taken out to the dump.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, no, he didn't do that. And he did take the security tapes, right? And, this Baskin-Robbins, all the families showed up. They're like, the girls are gone, right? Phone calls start being made, and they were hopeful that night that maybe they'd be found, that they were just missing, that something really strange had gone on. But their bodies were discovered that morning at the park. So,
and I'm sorry, I can't imagine the guilt that brother probably felt. Like if I had just been waiting in the parking lot, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Instead. Oh yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry.
So much survivor's guilt around all of this.
Yeah.
Like some of these family members, during the trial, these trials are very hard on the families, because the system of the trial is kind of set up to protect the person who is accused and their rights, right? And it grinds on these families. Like, why does he get this? Why does he get due process when my loved one was just snuffed out?
Yeah.
And you know, that's understandable, but that's the system.
Yeah.
So, more evidence of his crimes. Blood splatter found on his shoes, from the Baskin-Robbins crimes, as well as 4 gallon jugs, like milk jugs, that contained over $1,000 in coins. Where do you think a person might acquire that kind of coin?
Stealing from registers of multiple businesses.
Yeah. So throughout the process of the trial, Paul Reed Jr. Didn't say a lot. He never confessed. He told all kinds of lies, obvious lies, about his life. But in the end, he was convicted because of this evidence, and the juries did not take long to deliberate. I think one jury like slept on it for the night and came back the next morning and was like, all right, guilty. So he was convicted of 7 first-degree murders, and he received 7 death sentences for his crimes. Paul Reed Jr. did not. He chose lethal injection because I guess in Tennessee you get to choose.
Huh.
Yeah, I think your options are lethal injection or the electric chair.
Oh.
Which, whatever. But I guess prison officials give guys a bad time if they choose the lethal injection. That's seen as the pansy way out.
Ah, you're such a bitch.
Like, come on, you pansy. Real men sit down. So, whatever. But Paul Reed Jr. never got the needle. They had plans. There was a couple times that he almost did. His execution date came up a couple times. They even had all the families loaded up on a bus to get them ready to go out to witness the execution when it got put off and they had to turn around.
Why so many stays of execution?
Just different appeals and, different governors putting it off. This is one of those things. I don't know when the last time Tennessee actually executed someone was. I think it was in like the 70s.
I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not like, in this particular case, I almost wish there was just like a bailiff right behind him, and as soon as the guilty verdict was given and the 7 death sentences was given, he just shot him 7 times in the back of the head immediately. Like,
yeah, I mean, you would think it'd be simple like that. Oh no, they've done some executions since then. So they've done some as back in 2018.
Okay. All right.
But it doesn't matter. Anyways, So, yeah, I mean, that would be nice. But that's just not how the system works. Like,
I know.
He has to have an appeal, blah, 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 blah. This is why I personally am an advocate against the death penalty. I just think it's too expensive. It takes so long. It sucks. Like, these guys have to be housed in separate units of the prison, you know, and they get all this weird special treatment. Screw these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're assholes. Put them in prison for life. That's it. We're done. Go rot. Like, we don't ever want to hear from you again. You can go put in your appeals, but you're gonna die in this hole, and that's it.
See, with the putting in the appeals thing, though, I feel like parole should never be an option, though. Like, the appeals is to try to get paroled, right? You're just trying to get...
Right. Well, I mean, if you can be sentenced to life without parole...
Yes.
Which is what he would have gotten in these cases.
Yeah.
If they weren't, death penalty cases. So, yeah, I mean... the only other option would be to try and prove that you were like completely innocent and exonerate yourself. Because we know sometimes guys end up on death row who didn't actually do it. You know?
Yes.
So that's the only thing, because of, lots of different factors in this country, that sort of thing does happen. So that's part of why I advocate against the death penalty. But it's not that these guys don't deserve death. You're right, Lee. Like, he deserves fucking a double tap to the back of the head.
He got 7 death sentences. He should have been shot 7 times in the head.
Lie down on the floor on the cold ground like you made all those other people do.
Yeah.
And have someone stand over you with a gun.
And we're going to shoot you 7 times in the back and then shoot you once in the head.
Yeah. Real asshole. That's what he deserved. And honestly, he probably deserved worse than that because he's a giant asshole. But what actually happened was Paul Reed Jr. died on death row in 2013 from pneumonia. There are some who speculate that this pneumonia might have been related to AIDS. Who knows? That's like a rumor that was out there. Of course, prison officials can't comment because of federal healthcare privacy laws. So
HIPAA applies to inmates too?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. So, what was Paul Reed Jr.'s legacy? It was 7 sad, broken families. All their circles of friends for these people who felt like they could have done more, people who felt like they should have done something, people who felt like it should have been them instead of their friends and coworkers and loved ones. And that's a real shitty thing to do to people. Beyond the murders, which are grisly and terrible, the psychological torture that all of these other people had to go through is enough to deserve life in prison.
Yes.
So, giant asshole, Paul Reed Jr. Why did he commit these crimes? Like, why? Because he was stupid? Because he didn't know how else to get money? Because he had a violent, narcissistic streak in him from youth where he didn't care about other people?
I think that's it. I think that he had so much narcissism that he had he did not care about other people at all. Everything was about him. Everything was about about him getting what he wants, but he was too stupid to realize that crime, if you steal, you're going to eventually get caught somehow. If you murder, they're going to try harder to catch you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So he was too stupid to realize the risk versus reward. And that's terrible for a narcissist. Right? If for somebody that is already so obsessed with their own personal gain and looks and all that, right? For them to not be smart enough to understand risk versus reward, it's a completely different scenario. Because I can look at something that I don't necessarily care about, and even many psychopaths do this, and that's why a lot of psychopaths aren't necessarily criminals.
Yeah, well, and talk about Paul Reed Jr. and how dumb he was, to not understand this risk reward. He was developmentally delayed as a child. He did have learning problems. There was something wrong with his brain, straight up. That's not an excuse for what he did, but he was messed up, and they had to have a number of psychologists come in to try and test his competency before he was tried. It turns out that his IQ is borderline what they might have said in 1997 retarded. He's not all there, but he definitely knew the difference between right and wrong, and he's such a liar. The prison official said this guy is not as dumb as he seems. While he was locked up, they're like, he is a faker, he is looking for attention, he is dangerous, and don't let your guard down around this man. So I think a lot of what he did was a show. I think he was just such a piece of shit that he was dumb. He didn't care. He's one of those people who's so dumb he doesn't know he's dumb.
Exactly.
He's one of those people who believes the lies he tells about himself. He was a person who deserved a much worse fate than he got, but luckily he's not around anymore.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you're right, too dumb to know he's actually dumb. He thinks he's smart.
Yeah, and this is such a dangerous combination.
Yes.
When you look at his early life and you look at his escalation, and there was no one who could step in.
Well, there were people who should have stepped in that didn't, but at the same time, yes, there was no one that could step in. There was no one. There was kind of a tipping point where you were at the limit, but I believe that there were some chances in his early life that I heard that if somebody had saw the warning signs and gotten him some help, maybe he wouldn't have turned out the way he was. Yeah,
well, and the thing is, he was sent to this Catholic boys' school for wayward youth, as a problem child. It didn't help. His high school years, he was on his own. Maybe he needed to be in an environment like that for the rest of his youth. Maybe he needed to be committed because he was criminally insane after he had committed all these robberies. And he was writing paranoid letters about mind control to the governor. He did get prescribed some antipsychotic medication that they said helped at the time, but it seems like after he got paroled, that just went away.
Yeah.
So here's a guy who needs antipsychotic drugs to function, living out on his own with delusions of grandeur, and a history of robbery. When he needs money, what's he gonna do? He's gonna go back to crime. So that was it. That's what happened. Luckily, this asshole's dead.
Yes. Thank God.
And I guess the only other thing to say is shout out to Judith Yates and her book When Nashville Bled, where we did a lot of our research here. It was fantastic. It led us to a lot of primary sources, newspaper articles from like the Tennessean and all that sort of stuff. It details in excruciating detail what the families of these victims went through. And it is a great memorial to them because they were real people. You know, we've all worked with good folks at different stores and places like that. There's good ones. There's people who have hopes and dreams, and they're, you know, working a retail job to move on in their lives. And some of them are just good people who work that job and are really good at it. And they don't deserve to get what these 7 individuals and poor Jose Gonzalez all got. You know, violent attacks, murder.
You got to hand it to Jose. Like, he was a small guy, and he decided he was going to fight for his life, and he did.
Yeah.
And he did what he had to do to survive.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we all got to do. You know, that's our piece of wisdom for today. Everyone's got to do what they got to do. You know, sometimes you got to go work a second job, make a little money. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not that glamorous. Sometimes it's, you know, if you're a teenager, you want to buy a car, it's good to find out, you know, how to work and earn money. If you're an adult and you want something, you know, go work. There's a lot of jobs out right now in the service sectors, Lee, retail and that sort of thing after the Rona. And I know people were hurting financially. The thing to do, probably not knock over businesses and murder the employees.
Please don't.
Yeah.
I'd prefer it if you didn't. Hey, guys, a good rule of thumb I like to keep in mind in my retail life is the acronym of ADD, which boils down to avoid, deny, and defend. If you are ever in a situation where there is somebody with a gun, the first thing you can try to do is avoid the attacker. Try to put something between yourself and that attacker. Deny them access to you. Get in a locked room, something of that nature. Don't be a hero in those cases. But the last step is defend. If there is no other option, do what Jose did. Defend yourself. Fight back.
Yeah, this is tough because the thing that everyone's trained to do is comply.
No, that's the first step. I mean, comply.
Right. Yeah.
But
and yeah, the guy takes the money and leaves. Okay, there you go. Call the cops. Mm-hmm. You know, this Baskin Robbins in 1997 that got knocked over didn't have an alarm system. That they didn't think they needed it. It's a small town. It's an ice cream shop. There's not that much money in there. Mm-hmm. Who would want to rob an ice cream shop?
Somebody that's very stupid.
You know, so a lot of these business owners, you know, after the Captain D's robbery, because Shoney's owned Captain D's, the employees were taken to the Shoney's for grief counseling and for a meal. The Shoney's where Paul Reed worked as a cook.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So they're trying to do the right thing, but unbeknownst to them, the asshole is in their midst.
Oh.
Yeah.
My God.
According to the stories, McDonald's did take care of Jose Gonzalez, and you know, tried to do some damage control about his undocumented status. But this guy fought for his life. Oh, it was his like 3rd day on the job. 3rd day.
He had literally learned how to use 911 from a guy that was murdered right next to him.
Right, yeah, like just a day before, like a day or two before he had to use it himself.
What kind of impression do you think that puts in a person's mind? Like, they have a special number for calling for help, and Oh man, 3 days later.
Yeah, I don't know. Just I don't know, some
gosh.
kind of.
Yeah. Hey guys, this has been an awful story. This has been a sad story. This has been an amazingly stupid story of people's bravery and people's
Evil.
and the evil that the people can have.
Yeah.
I am immensely proud of everybody that was involved except for one person.
Right. Everyone who took down this asshole, props to them.
Yes.
Go ahead, get this book, When Nashville Bled, Judith A. Yates. I got it off Amazon. You can too. Read it. It's good. The grisly details. Grab some tissues. It's rough.
Yeah. Dan had me tearing up. He's looking at me over here. I'm about to cry. I
Yeah.
wish we were on Skype. I could have turned off the video. It's not I just got something in my eye, that's all.
Yeah. So, guys, take care of yourselves. This is going to be our last show together in the Haunted Barn studio. We're going to go back to our long distance recording, but it has been awesome to be up here in Clarksville. We are loving it. And we want to give a special shout out. We split this into 2 episodes. We ended the first one so we could go to dinner and get barbecue. We got to end this one because I got to head back home. But it's been awesome. This will give some work to our editor, Mike Roop. Shout out to him and Simple Equations Media, Las Vegas, Nevada, for helping us out. You can check them out on Instagram, Facebook, all kinds of places.
And as always, you can get to us on beyondterrestrial.com, Facebook, Fourth Hand Media Network.
Yes, fourthhand.com/shows. That's FORTH.
And on Twitter at BeyondTPod.
And at our website, beyondterrestrial.com.
I already said that.
Did you?
Yeah, it was the first thing I said.
Oh, good. Just to drive it home, it's our website, and we really want you to visit it.
Please.
Oh, hey, we have a fan group, too. Check it out.
Absolutely. You can find that link on Facebook.com.
Yes, go to our page on Facebook. You'll see it. We love you all. Keep your feet on the ground and keep looking up for more stories, more strangeness from out there beyond terrestrial.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Terrestrial, all 3 of y'all. If you're still a fan of this show, follow Beyond Terrestrial on social media and join the Beyonders Facebook group for even more strangeness. Links to everything, including previous episodes, are available at beyondterrestrial.com. That's the place to go for stickers, merch, show swag, and our Patreon. Patrons get exclusive access to ad-free shows, giveaways, and the unedited after-show show. Anything you give to the show goes straight to Funk Master B's bachelor pad, which for now is also where these jive turkeys record this show. This show was edited by Simple Equations Media with music by Mike Roop. Dan and Lee will be back next Tuesday with more from Beyond Terrestrial.